Welcome to the Success in Africa podcast with Dr. Modupe, your weekly dose of leadership vitamins to make you successful in Africa.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Success in Africa podcast. My name is Dr. Modupe Taylor Pierce, and I am a scholar and practitioner of leadership and organizational development. Simply put, I study what makes people successful. And I have been studying this with a particular focus on people in Africa over the past 30 years, 3 decades. And in this podcast, what I do is I share stories, insights, perspectives about those people who have achieved success so that you can also learn some of the ways and the tips to get there. Why am I doing this? Because I have a vision. I have a vision of Africa becoming a middle-income continent by 2030 and a high-income continent by 2040. And for that to happen, I need you. Yes, you, the listener, you, the watcher, to become successful. Because most of us don't really count success as dying poor. So, if you are serious about this, I want you to just like the video, subscribe to this channel so that you can be with us. This podcast is brought to you by BCA Online, which is your one-stop shop for mastering leadership. Joining it is free. You can access a plethora of information. So today I'm so excited because we are interviewing a gentleman who has definitely achieved some success in an industry that is extremely difficult to achieve it. His name is Mr. Allan Kilavuka. He is from Kenya and he is the CEO of Kenya Airways. So now we're going to transition a bit into your professional life. And, how did you get into the aviation business? Did you start off there? How did you get into aviation from university?
Good. So it's a bit of a long journey, but I'll make it shorter. So I didn't start out in aviation. In fact, I never dreamt of joining aviation at all. It was never in my mind, not even remotely. It was never in my first or second or third choice. I never really thought about it at all. I started my training as a certified accountant with Deloitte, an international firm. And what I keep telling people is that the training that I got from Deloitte was fundamental because it was my first job, my first formal job, because I had done some other informal jobs. So my first formal job, and what I got from there, what I gleaned from Deloitte was professionalism, integrity, and getting things done on time. So that if you promise a customer that you will deliver, we call them clients because of service, if you promise a client that you will give them the document at 8 in the morning the next day, that meant 8 o'clock the next day, not 8:05 or 8:10. And that was very important. So it taught me, disciplined me. So it meant that even if it means you sleeping in the office to get the work done, I would do that. Do everything that is within your powers to make sure that you deliver the document, the deliverables on time. So it was an important lesson for me. That's what I learned from Deloitte. So that was professionalism, discipline, integrity, getting things done as you should. And then I was lucky to join, after 10 years, I was lucky that I was headhunted to join GE, or General Electric, which at that time was probably the largest and probably the most admired company in the world. Now, probably not the same with the coming of Amazon and the likes. At that time, it was very well thought of company. So I was very, very privileged to join GE. And I was joining GE because they wanted someone, first of all, with integrity, because integrity was a foundation. Secondly, they wanted someone who would help them to grow Africa. So that needed discipline, that needed knowledge of the African context, and it needed someone who looked like me, a black man, of course, a black person. So they hired me for that. And, again, it taught me other different skill sets, which were critical for me, again, in my subsequent assignments. So in GE, first of all, it helped me to develop, in GE, we used to say then, I'm not sure now, that the main product that we developed or we produced was leadership, not engines or not or not insurance products and things. It was leadership, because it is leaders who then go ahead to produce products and services that customers can buy. So our products was leadership. So GE was very big on developing leaders. And I was very, very privileged to attend a lot of their very key leadership trainings, executive training courses in Cottonville, University in New York, that helped me to sharpen myself, also challenge you, stretch you. I had global assignments. My territory was Africa, so I traveled across the length and breadth of Africa, get to know the different cultures and get to learn how to work cross-culturally, borderlessly, with different types of people, different time zones, different types of expectations. Very eye-opening. So it really expanded my leadership breadth. And that was important for me. It also helped me to see how different leadership styles are important for different types of people. With a very big G, we had 300,000 people, so different people. Now, after that is when I joined aviation. Like I said, it was not in my mind at all. In fact, I was headhunted for a job in aviation. Now, I was very skeptical in the beginning because I didn't think I had the skill set, but I was convinced by them that what they needed from me most is what they didn't have, which is a kind of leadership that I would offer that particular company then. So I joined because of that, because they had the expertise, aviation expertise. I had the leadership acumen. So that together we would make a success of what had been started. So it was a startup, and I helped to sit there and nurture the startup and turn it into a very successful airline. And so I was just beginning to enjoy myself when Kenya Airways came knocking. So this is how I got into aviation. And, within 2 years, I was completely engrossed. In fact, we say in aviation, once you smell the jet fuel, you get addicted. So you don't want to be.
Now, now, I love the fact that through your professional journey, what I'm getting is that the same lessons you learned at Deloitte of keeping your promises, discipline, integrity, really was what made you a cut above, that made people or investors look for you. And so you were headhunted into each place you went to, whether it was GE, who was looking for people of excellence, and they said, that's the person, etc. And therefore, that's the lesson for us to learn, because, quality cream will always rise to the top. And
Absolutely.
that cream is when you demonstrate your willingness to be professional, to be on time, to deliver on your promises. That's fantastic. Now,
In fact,
your
if I may
time.
add something, just one little thought, because I think this one is important. So, just to illustrate what you've just said, when I was because I was headhunted, like I said, for my job, my first aviation job in Jambojet, there were people who were also interviewed. Of course, I wasn't the only one interviewed for this job. And all of them had in-depth experience in aviation. Now, on paper, one would clearly see that they were probably more suitable for the job than I was, because I didn't have aviation experience. But what the recruiters were looking for was not just the hard stuff. In fact, they thought the soft stuff was more important. What you just mentioned, integrity, discipline, self-leadership, initiative, professionalism. Those kinds of things are not easy to teach. It's easy for me to learn the procedures and processes in aviation, but much more difficult for someone to learn this other skill set. I just wanted to illustrate that to you.
I love that. In fact, a friend of mine who's a basketball coach told me this. He said, "You cannot teach height."
Ah, well, wow.
He said, "Modupe, I'll take a 6'9" person who's never played basketball over a 5'7" person who's played for 15 years
I will use that.
because you don't,
I will use that.
you cannot teach height.
Yeah.
And there are just certain things that you have to understand are intangibles that you must have for certain positions. Okay. Now, despite all this, success, it appears that your timing for joining Kenya Airways could not have been, shall we say, less fortuitous.
Yeah.
So I understand that you, whether by your choice or not, joined this airline pretty much on the week when all airlines were shut down. Tell us about that. Why did you decide to jump into this at the worst time ever?
Yes. So the story is that there was supposed to be there was a leadership gap. There was a CEO who had just left Kenya Airways, and they needed someone to step in an acting capacity. And so they thought that I was the right person. So that was just 3 months before COVID. Of course, we didn't know COVID was coming at that time. So they said, can you come? You act for 4 months. In fact, they told me. And then we are currently recruiting. So they were recruiting. They were actually talking to very experienced aviation people. And then we'll replace you once we get the correct candidate. And I initially resisted, but then I thought I should help because this was, something good for me to help. So I did. But after 3 months, they said, you know what? In fact, we think you you should be one of the candidates. Again, I resisted. And they said, no, you put in, we'd like you to interview for the job. And then we pick the best of the four of you, because we were four of us. And I did. And they decided to pick me of the four. And like you rightly pointed out, the moment they picked me and I started, that very same time was when COVID was announced, borders were shut, we packed our planes, and then so what? So that's the big question. And so this is where, linking it back to my early childhood, this is where it was very important for you to think on your feet, to develop resilience, to incorporate people, to encourage people, to communicate. Communication was a very important skill, and then to innovate. So all of a sudden, I knew in this company, they don't know me, so I have to develop trust because here is a new CEO who's telling them, don't worry, hang in there, it will all be okay. So it was a big task. I mean, I can share some of the things that we did, but it called for a lot of resilience, grit, as I say.
I suspect coming into a new industry where, as they say, you're not a veteran of the industry, there are probably some choices you made that maybe now if you had to look back, you might have said, I could have made some different choices. What would you say was some of the either biggest or most painful mistakes that you made in this turnaround journey?
Yeah. So, I mean, there are quite a number. But the good thing with mistakes is that you can learn from them or they can crush you. So you decide. So maybe I'll give you an example. I think at the point when we had COVID, we had a choice of like different companies of doing a reset or continuing as we are. And doing a reset is actually quite a painful process because it's really kind of almost starting afresh. But it was a good opportunity for us to do that so we can reset a lot of the things. I think it would have made the transformation a lot easier. Now, although I take it as my mistake, is because I wasn't able to convince the board, nor was I able to convince the principal shareholders, although I believe that was the right thing to do. But of course, they didn't buy into this. So I guess I should have persisted a lot more, that we need a reset, start from scratch, because it was the best opportunity. I think we lost that opportunity. So maybe that would be one of the ones I would say was the biggest one. We also started, let me give you an example. We also started what I still champion to date, called the Pan-African Airline Group. And what that is just a consolidation of different airlines across Africa to make us more formidable, to make us more viable, to make us more sustainable. And I started the discussions with South African Airways at that time in 2020. There were many things for me to do, but I didn't sell it, I don't think, well enough. I didn't sell it, I wasn't persistent enough. Again, it comes back to my persistence. So it was very obvious to me, and it still is even to me up to now, but I don't think it needs a lot more selling, maybe more different tact, so that people can understand the importance and the criticality of this initiative. So those are some of the two things I could have done differently.
Wow. I love the fact that, like you say, these are areas that you realize it's about galvanizing a larger group of people who you may not have control over, and yet you need them to come along with you.
Tomorrow belongs to those people who prepare for it today. See you next week.